What is so different about what moves the price of silver now in 2025 than in years prior? Well, not a whole lot to be honest with you, but there's enough that it has had a big impact on silver's price this year, and I think it will continue into 2026. Let's talk about the drivers for silver's price as we explore. It is amazing to see silver move in the way it has this year. Even with the supposed summer doldrums, there's not really much of that happening with silver's price. It has stayed up and has far outperformed inflation this year in 2025. Even if you took 2025 out of the mix, silver has done quite well over the past couple of years. And there's reasons for that. And a lot of it really is amplified by what we've seen in the past. It's just been more so the case. And the metrics have changed and shifted a bit here. And the first thing is gold. And gold is driving the prices of silver. Make no mistake, that is a big part of it. And there's other aspects of the silver market that I'm going to be talking about that that may not have as much of an influence as you may think, although there is an influence there as well. But gold prices at record highs, investing in silver and other metals has been getting some attention, according to Adrian Ash. And the factors that include is just gold. Because with the safe haven trading and all-time records, silver has hit its 14-year highs in terms of the dollar and, of course, the euro. In other currencies, silver has reached all-time highs. In other words, well above $50 an ounce in those currencies, much as we've seen before. But, of course, there's been dips along the way. In fact, as I'm recording this video, there's been a pretty big dip in the price. But nonetheless, it's always good to kind of look around and average and dollar cost average. And it's always good to shop around, too, when you do that. The channel sponsor is Summit Metals. They have a good selection, and they've got excellent customer service and fast shipping as you're shopping around. But remember, folks, you should not buy out of fear. You should not sell out of fear. You should buy only when it's right for you, as your budget allows, and your level of understanding of the markets, because anything can happen, that's for sure. And we've seen that take place. Nobody is always right, and nobody is always wrong either in terms of what's going to happen with the market. But educated guesses are the key, and dollar cost averaging is also the key when buying precious metals. But silver is very different in demand and supply dynamics to gold, as we know. And it has lost its use essentially as a monetary metal long before gold has. In fact, gold really still is used as money between central banks. And that is something that a lot of people don't know or understand, but indeed it is. And in fact, since it became a Tier 1 asset in April of 2019, the framework for such a thing has been in development for years long before then. And they keep building upon that. Central banks have been adding gold to their portfolio since 2022, especially after the invasion of Ukraine. And there's been this effort to de-dollarize as well, and that has propped up gold. And silver has gone along with it in many ways. But remember, the gold to silver ratio is still high and remains higher than most people, higher than the average, and higher than most people would like to see. So there's an opportunity for silver, but there's also frustration with silver for a lot of the same reasons. But it does have different demand and supply dynamics. And that is something to understand as far as its use as an industrial metal. And it keeps silver very much in gold's orbit, and its price over the past half century has moved in the same direction as gold's 77% of the time, day to day, week to week, and also year to year. But correlation isn't causation, of course. We know that. Hence why there's a lot of the widening of the gold to silver ratio that we've been seeing as of late. And of course, there's speculation because silver's daily price movements are on average 76% more volatile than gold. That's why it's very difficult to really predict to see what's going to happen in the market for silver, and why the changing dynamics take place. Mining fundamentals, demand and supply fundamentals are changing, and but they're largely intact but still changing. And so this essentially is what we're seeing with the price movements and the volatility. This comes thanks to silver being a smaller market, very tiny market overall. And by the way, the market itself is very different than the market cap for silver. A lot of people don't understand that, but speculative flows in or out move the price more dramatically than gold. It's also because of the resulting volatility that attracts speculative traders seeking quick gains, fueling from volatility, or covering their short positions. Many people feel that there is that happening, and I want to address that as well too, because I'm more open-minded to such a thing about the big bullion banks who hold most of those positions in the SLV and ETFs and the derivatives markets. And many of them are trying to cover those short positions and to protect them so they don't lose money, and so that they can essentially have to suppress the price of silver because of that. There's manipulation that works in both directions as well. We've documented that on this channel ad nauseum as well too. And that is for personal profit gain off the metals market. That can move the price up or down. And of course, we know that volatility that turns into earning silver for the infamous tag of what's known as the devil's metal among hedge funds who have been blown up by silver's fast and furious swings. But gold has been much more stable in that realm. And we've seen that even recently. Silver has on average been almost twice as volatile on a daily basis over the past half century. Now, the economic growth. Silver finds over 50% of its net demand from productive rather than investment or adornment uses, more than 5 times the proportion for gold. So in other words, it's an industrial metal. It has a dual role. And so that is certainly something that we are seeing more and more as the use cases widen. In other words, it is the most volatile metal on the periodic table, the second most versatile commodity, oil being the first. But it is the most versatile metal on the planet with over 10,000 use cases for it. And so silver does lack any monetary role today, and it's often seen as pro-growth industrial alternative to the safe haven aspect. So that's why the widening ratio. And it's also known as a metal with a PhD in economics thanks to its tracking and mapping how financial traders see the outlook for the global economic demand. But with silver being buoyed up by all this accumulation of gold by central banks, this is something that is unique to this bull run that we're seeing. This rally for silver is propped up in large part because of that. Also, because we're now the 5th year of a supply deficit of silver. That is also part of what's keeping the price up, if you believe those numbers. And if we're not in an actual deficit, we're closer than ever before to that. Remember, you have recycling, if you have other factors too that make it hard to gauge, where you get different opinions on that. But nonetheless, silver is in a tight squeeze. Yes, it is in a squeeze, and it may be softening a bit, it may be tightening a bit. We don't know the latest numbers, but that squeeze has been in the SLV and the big bullion banks holding those contract-sized bars, but it's not in physical form, much like what you see here before you. You can get it very easily for relatively moderate premiums, and there's so much of it now at coin shops and dealers that they're paying far back of spot price for it. That's the changing dynamic of the market, which moves the prices, by the way. Sometimes utilizing spot as a basis, but you get less than spot whenever you go to sell your precious metal. And you pay a little bit less for it if you go to buy it, especially for constitutional, which is why it's a good idea to have, I think, some constitutional silver in your stack. But that's what's different now in 2025 than in prior years, is seeing that supply-demand fundamental, the geopolitical situation we find ourselves in still, even to this day, even with some hope around the corner. And then, of course, the Federal Reserve. More so than ever before, people are paying attention to what the Federal Reserve is going to do. Yes, the Fed does play a role in moving the markets, all the markets. Silver is not immune from that. It's going to fall along with that because it revolves around the strength of the dollar. But even more importantly, with what we're dealing with, maybe not as much now, but it is still a factor. We have an inflated dollar. That means it's losing value. and it's more than the Fed's target of 2%. And that is playing a role in silver's price now, which is unique really since 2022. Seeing silver's price now starting to really show itself as a hedge against inflation by going up in price to really start to be more realistic in terms of its value proposition. And that is so important to understand in 2025. And so we'll see how this plays out. But I think that if we start to see central banks get relaxed and we see the situation in Ukraine resolve itself through negotiations and peace comes to the table, and we may see some central banks selling off some of their gold. If that happens, gold price will go down, but silver's price might not go down because of that, because of the industrial applications. And if the economy, the global economy, picks up or improves, demand for silver will pick up and improve. That's going to be good for silver's price. So I think that's an interesting proposition. I think really, in a sense, silver can't lose in 2025, even with some of the pullbacks that we've been seeing. I think there is a much higher floor and support for silver than we've seen ever before with silver. That is a very bullish claim that I'm making here, folks. In other words, I don't think we'll see silver fall much below $30 in a worst case scenario. Could I be wrong? Yes, I could. I've been wrong about that before, or about silver before. But still, I think there's so much going for silver right now in a positive direction that it seems like we're on that path, even with some of the pullbacks we've been seeing. So if we see a dollar pullback on a given day or two, I think it'll correct itself and it'll consolidate. As I record this video right now, we're starting to see some of that in the overnight markets. Very, very faint, very slight. Of course, everything can change in a dime, and for sure, no one really knows what's going to happen. But in the end, this is a different market in 2025 as far as how the price is affected to a large degree than in prior years, I believe. And it's a culmination of what's been going on over the past few years. But let me know what your thoughts are. It's always good to take stock on what the drivers are for the price. And let me know what you think. I hope you found this video informative, insightful, and educational. Would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.